Hey everyone, episode 2 of Chase the Peace. Here we go. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really pumped about my guest that you're going to get to hear from. I'll introduce her in just a minute. But I want to say sincerely from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for your support so far. The more that you can like, share, and subscribe, and also rate this content, the better the chances are that someone that needs to hear these conversations and know they're not alone will. So thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Okay, my guest today, I'm super pumped. Ladies, you are in for such a treat. Her name is Amanda Coker. She's a successful business owner. She owns a photography business named Dash Photography here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. She also started a women's wellness retreat called Reviv Retreats as a result of her own challenges related to mental health. She's going to unpack that story here for you in just a little bit. So without further ado, episode 2 of Chase the Peace. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the show, Amanda Coker. Amanda, thank you so much for being here. This is literally episode number 2.
Wow.
So I'm super pumped that you're here. Thank you for being willing to share, some of your journey as it relates to wellness and some of the work you're doing in that world. Everybody knows who you are because I've just set you up, but tell us about your day-to-day life. Like today, your family dynamic, you run a business, like you've got a lot going on. Tell us about it.
Yeah. I think I have gotten, for the first time in my life at 36 years old, I'm finally getting into a rhythm of life, maybe just for this week even. But I'm a mom. I have a almost 3-year-old, and my husband, Brandon, is a musician / career changing into real estate. And
who is a phenomenal
like
human. I love your husband dearly.
He is. Yes, he is. And he is literally don't know if I would actually be here today if it wasn't for him. So,
wow.
I own a photography business. We've been in the wedding and senior market for about 13 years now. And in the last, I would say 4 years or so, I've really transitioned into women's wellness just because from my own journey with business ownership and mental health struggles throughout that, I've recognized that the expectation that's put on women, especially if you want to be a mom, but also have career aspirations and dreams, is really challenging. And I think we aren't created to do it all, but sometimes we feel like in order to be successful or, a super woman, that's necessary. And so I'm still balancing both photography and wellness, and it's been really fun to see how those kind of intertwine and those two worlds merge. But yeah, I feel like every day we're just trying to figure out how to be a mom and how to keep up with his energy, pros and cons to being an older parent. But yeah, we, just your typical middle-aged little family.
Middle-aged? How you said it out loud? Are you owning that? Are you doing okay with that?
You know what? I'm doing okay with it. I'll let you know when I turn 40 here in a couple years.
Okay. So women's wellness. I'm very interested in how you ended up. So I want you to tell everyone about it's Reviv, right? Yes. I want you to tell everyone about that and what it is. And then once we kind of unpack that a little bit, I'd like to step back as far as you would like, just to unpack a little bit of your challenges as it relates to mental health and wellness, just so we have some context to understand kind of where you've come from, and then what you're building, which is super cool.
So Reviv, it's wellness retreats for women in business. And it started out as like women in business leadership. And as it's kind of evolved, and I'll delve into a little bit of what that consists of, but as it's evolved, it's really turned into wellness retreats for working women. And that includes stay-at-home moms, because that is a full-time job in itself. And really trying to address the stigma with that. But working women, so that encompasses everyone, because everyone's working on something. And we host them in Puerto Rico currently, and it really just addresses health from a holistic perspective. So, within my own journey of figuring out anxiety and depression, I really tried to address it from every single angle. And part of that was trying to stay off medication for as long as possible. But then the other part of that was I just believe it's all connected. And,
Yeah.
we aren't educated on hormone health, and thankfully it's way more of a topic nowadays, but I feel like there's so much left uncovered in women's health. So the retreat is just a chance for these ladies to come down and be served and just rest, and there's educational elements to it. We have a therapist slash business coach, executive coach who is down there. We have a hormone coach who's down there. We're expanding some of the topics into like sexual health and just stuff that we have no idea. You get your basic education in high school, and then it's just like, okay, good luck.
Yeah.
So we really are trying to create a space where these ladies can just be and not have to make decisions. And, they're constantly juggling 50 plates and schedules and husbands and kids. And so just allowing them to just rest. And it's been so incredible. And my kind of motivation for that was creating a space that I wish that I had whenever I was in the throes of my darkest days. And so I've really curated everything from what would have been helpful for me during this season.
Wow.
And so even though I'm technically working when I'm there, it's very therapeutic for me as well, because everything from the music that's playing in the house all the time to having a chef and the food that's prepared and, all the luxuries of it, but then also just the community, because as women, it's so hard to make friends as adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure for guys too, but the community aspect of it, the ocean's always been really healing for me. And so having it at the beach and so we kicked off January of 2020. And then obviously the world fell apart in March of 2020. And so we just relaunched this past January, and we had such a great resurgence that we have another one coming up in November and then another one in January. And we're actually making a few changes in January, because what's really cool is our January retreat is almost completely full, and it's all returning ladies.
Whoa.
So that's
amazing.
That was huge for me, because they saw the value in it, and it was, life-changing for so many people. And just knowing that they treasured that time so much to come back is really big. But then I'm like, okay, I can't just rinse and repeat. I have to change it up a little bit. Yeah. So,
but how cool!
I'm really excited.
Yeah, there's nothing more honoring than like a repeat customer, right? I mean, that is that's really awesome. Why is it that women seem to be held to a different standard when it comes to like balancing work and family? What? It's not fair, but it exists. Why is it that way? How did we get here?
Nate, that is the golden question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think some of it might be self-imposed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't know. Honestly, this is something I've been trying to figure out and unpack with fellow ladies. But I think part of it's societal. I think some of it's self-imposed. I think because of all the opportunities that we have now, it's kind of like, the possibilities are endless. And so you can pursue literally anything, but also you're naturally the biggest caregiver, because humans come from us. And so it's not like we can just deny that. And once you become a mom, there's, at least for me, a lot of perspective that I had on, I could never be a stay-at-home mom. My kid's going to be, I'm going to have a nanny from 9 to 5, and I'm still going to travel and do all the things. Then you have the kid, you're like, oh, this is what
it all
people
changes.
mean when it just changes everything,
Yeah.
because everything shifts. And I want to be as present as I can be, but also I can't deny who I am and the dreams I feel like that God has created me with. And
Yeah.
so I think so many women are just stuck in that in between of the two of those things,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because I'm a firm believer in that there is no such thing as a perfect balance. Like
Hmm.
you have to figure out the balance that best works for you and your family and your career and your goals of where you want to go. But it's not fair that it's like motherhood and like you guys are held to a different standard in some way. I don't know.
Hmm.
I feel like we could talk about that for an entire
Oh, for
episode.
sure. Oh, for sure.
It's
I know that the Barbie movie there's been some controversy and they either love it or they hate it. But there was a monologue in there that really, really resonated with me. And I think has resonated with pretty much 100% of the women that have seen it. But just talking about the double standard that's set of, you need to be this, but you can't be that, and you need to be that, but you can't be too much of that because you need to be this. And it's just, there's no winning.
I want to back up a little bit and have you just unpack a little bit for us. You've started Revive, this amazing women's retreat. You launched it during COVID, crazy, but it seems like things are really coming full circle. But unpack for us, why are you passionate about wellness? Where does that come
Mhm.
from? When did that start for you? I mean, were there some significant events, or just unpack what you want to help us understand?
So I was about 4 years into full time business back in 2016, and I I was your typical hustler. I mean, I've always been a hard worker. I've always had dreams. My husband and I mean, he's the realist. I'm the dreamer. I think we can do absolutely anything. And he's like, okay, here's why this isn't going to work. So, but he's also very, he champions me.
Yeah.
Um, and so whenever I would reach a certain milestone, I wouldn't stop and celebrate that. I would be like, okay, well, what's next? What can I reach next? And
Hmm.
because of that, I had a really, really terrible work life balance, and my time management skills were just trash. And so I was working until, early morning hours until late at night, would forget to eat lunch. I would have to be like, okay, I'm legit. This is like very transparent. I'm legit about to pee my pants. If I don't go to the bathroom right now, I'm just going to pee right here at my desk.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
like, I just had such a hard time cutting off. And that resulted in a lack of friendships because I was constantly canceling on people or just not, um, not planning anything in general. Obviously, my marriage was suffering. My husband was on the road a lot and traveling for his job. And so the time that was spent with him at home, I was at my computer or I was at a gig or, so that was suffering. And then I started recognizing some really significant physical symptoms that just kind of, I don't want to say came out of the blue, but I feel like the significance of them kind of came out of the blue. And I was not able to fall asleep because I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. I couldn't
Mm.
take a deep breath. I mean, I would like take my clothes off trying to figure out if something was too tight. I went to the doctor and was like, I think I have asthma. And they're like, ma'am, you're 30 years old. I don't think you just like get asthma. But I got an inhaler. And so I would use the inhaler to try to be able to fall asleep. Um, I was on edge all of the time. I mean, Brandon could ask me a simple question like, what's for dinner? And I would just blow up because, imagine a cup that is completely full. Even the smallest drop of water is going to create a reaction when, if your cup is half empty or empty, then you have space and capacity for the extra stress. Well, I had zero capacity. And so obviously that was straining things. my clients were starting to suffer because I was overextending myself to the point where I couldn't give the best client experience because I didn't have it in me to give. So all of that was just starting to crumble, honestly. And that was the stuff that I was paying attention to the most when I had sirens in my own body just going off left and right. Constant migraines, insomnia, I mean, hormone issues, as far as we ended up, and this is kind of a little more into the story, having some minor fertility issues that I absolutely attribute to this season of my life. And so I recognized a few months into this that my life was miserable. The work that I was doing was not worth everything that I was struggling with. And either I was crazy or something was wrong because I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like my mind and my body were turning against me. And it was just this, and I couldn't focus on anything else because I couldn't even get my own brain in line. So I started retreating into myself. I started experiencing more depression. And honestly, I was just really selfish and just not a good friend or partner because I didn't have any space left to give. So it got to a point where obviously all of that stuff, the inhaler wasn't working. I started having panic attacks. We were at the beach one summer or that summer, and it was the beach was pretty crowded, and I was having such social anxiety from like that was one of the symptoms I was having was just extreme social anxiety. And we walked on the beach, and I asked Brandon, I said, "Can we please go a little further down? There's not as many people, and I would just like to be a little further down." He's like, "No, this is fine. Like, here's space, whatever." And I had a complete breakdown because he put the chairs down, and I just started hyperventilating and crying, and was like, "I can't do this. I can't be here. This is like, I feel like I'm suffocating." And that was the first time that he was like, "Okay, something's wrong, and this is not normal, and we need to address this." And sometime around that point, he asked me to start going to therapy because that's something that I'd been putting off. I'd done it in the past, but um, nothing super consistent. And so it was after that incident that he was like, "Hey, will you please consider going to therapy?" And that, I would say, was kind of the starting point of my work, and the beginning of a very long road of trying to find some peace.
Okay, so you're on the beach. You have this breakdown. And Brandon says, "Hold on, time out. Like this isn't normal. Whatever we're experiencing isn't normal. You got to get some help." You start going to therapy. What was your reaction based on like your first few sessions, and like how did they help you unpack what you were dealing with?
Leading up to that point, I had been to some regular, like, general physicians, stuff like that. And um, one of them told me, "Hey, like, if you don't figure this out, you're going to end up with premature heart conditions, issues, whatever." And so I was like, "Okay, well, that's no help at all." So the therapy was, it was really hard for me at first. Well, I say it was hard for me at first. I feel like it wasn't at the first few sessions because I was so desperate for relief, and I was so desperate to figure out what was going on that I was like, just whatever, I'll word vomit whatever you need." But then as because those first few sessions were really about managing the symptoms and not necessarily getting to the root of it, but just learning coping mechanisms and learning how to recognize the signs before it escalated and all of that. And so once we got through that part of it, then we could really start digging into the root issue of everything. And the first couple things. Number one, there's always a root to the issue, and it's rarely what you think it is. And for me, I experienced a lot of childhood trauma in various degrees. And a lot of even my work ethic was based on personal beliefs about myself that were instilled in me. And I felt like I was never good enough. I felt like I could never measure up, that I was just behind the eight ball from the beginning. I came from divorced parents and just had a really strenuous relationship with everyone involved. Both my parents remarried. And yeah, I think I dealt with a lot of things that a kid should not have to deal with, which isn't that the story of all childhood trauma?
For sure. Absolutely.
And then there was a very significant death in the family 2 weeks before I graduated college. And it was a very traumatic death. And it unearthed a lot in my family that I think had been pushed under the surface for a really long time. And everything just kind of erupted after that. And I was the peacemaker. I was the one who was trying to mediate. I was trying to make sure everyone was okay, respectively, and never dealt with my own grief and never dealt with my own anger and questions. And that was manifesting. I felt like I couldn't control anything in life, and my work was the one thing that I could control. And so I gripped it and strangled it until I couldn't. And that was all stuff that I started unearthing and unpacking in therapy. And obviously it was very therapeutic and there was a lot of healing, but the anxiety almost got worse in the first little bit. And this is what I tell people whenever they first start addressing this kind of stuff in therapy. When you're aware of it, when you take off the scab and are cleaning out the wound, you're going to be way more sensitive. You're going to be way more tender. You're going to be way more aware of the pain. And that was definitely something that I experienced. And so I always tell people it's going to get worse before it gets better, because you're going to have to turn and face the stuff that you've been running from. And you're going to have to turn and actually have hard conversations and address the pain that you've learned to cope with. And for me, it was, I was coping by becoming successful. And one of the things that I had to do that she helped me with was I completely cleared my schedule. I canceled everything. A solid 2 months worth of commitments that I had, shoots. I wiped my calendar and really just gave myself time to just sit in it. And I will say the first time that she used the phrase anxiety disorder to describe me, like, you have an anxiety disorder, that was really, really hard for me. Because I felt like it was a label that made me weak. It was embarrassing. There was, shame wrapped up in that. I felt broken. And that was something that I had felt all through my childhood and that I was trying to work against for so long. And it was almost like it kind of validated that. And I really had to work through that to just own that label and know that it wasn't. But on the other side of that, she was really, really great at being like, this is not who you are. This is something that you're struggling with. And this is something that there is a solution for. So I think my first several months, and I was going weekly at this point, I think my first several months were really spent managing the symptoms, accepting what is, and then separating that from my identity. And that was, I mean, that was a hard process. I think, especially in today's world, it's so great that is as a topic that's getting so much focus. But I think on the other side of that, it can really desensitize us to the reality of it. And things can be chalked up to mental health that maybe aren't necessarily. And so I also had to just address my pride with all of that, specifically with my family. And I come from a very conservative religious family that, choose joy, just choose joy. Like, you're not praying enough. You're not choosing joy enough. Like, I can't tell you how much I hate that phrase. And I have a much better understanding of it now. And I've really wrestled with that. But the initial, when that was initially, that was just like the answer from everyone. Well, you just got to choose joy. And I wanted to be like, motherfucker, you think I would choose? Like, if I could, I would choose joy. Like, it's not that easy.
If that was an option, of course, that's what I would choose.
Yes. So
yes.
There was a lot of just kind of reconstructing just my own thoughts around mental health. And so that was the first leg, I think, of addressing everything.
And I probably won't put this in the episode, but that's why I started this. I think we do a good job in a macro sense talking about mental health. I don't think we necessarily do a great job at the micro level saying, hey, this was my experience. These are the circumstances that led me to a place where I was really having a difficult time. And these were the things that I did to get back to a place where I could enjoy my life again. I think we're maybe starting to do a better job at that. But that's, I think once I was aware of what the human mind was capable of, I was holy shit. I told you the other day, it's like, there was a phrase that I kept coming back to that I read pretty early on when I was really struggling with depression, and it was don't waste your suffering. And that to me was something more that I could wrap my hands around than choose joy. So don't waste your suffering. So my thought was, okay,
that's good.
I'll eventually get through this. I don't know how, but I will use it to help people in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And obviously I've taken a long time to really make sure I was in a place where I was healthy enough to really start to do that. But anyhow, that's just a side note that, like, we're getting better, I think. At the micro level, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Other than therapy, initially after you had the breakdown on the beach, what were some of the other, like, short-term tactics? I know you said it was a 3-year journey. What were some of the short-term tactics? You bought your schedule. You had some therapy. Was there any medication involved, like exercise, diet changes, anything like that?
I was very against medication at the beginning. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my therapist would gently suggest that I try something, and I shot it down every single time. I honestly don't know the reason for that. I genuinely don't. That's something that I still kind of need to explore. I think it really was just my pride. I think it was the embarrassment of it and the shame of it. That's how I felt in the moment. And I knew that I didn't want to just medicate. It was so important to me that I found the root issues, whether that was emotionally, whether that was physically, whether that was spiritually. And so I really started doing a deep dive on how the world around me, what I was consuming, what I was using, how that affected me physically. And so I started working with a hormone coach, and honestly, she did wonders for me of really just learning my body. And I think that that's something, at least for me, and the environment that I grew up in, there was no education on that. I mean, I wasn't allowed to go to like sex ed class, and obviously this my hormone stuff isn't related to sex ed class, but there was zero education when it came to my body. And so I really just had this desire to learn how things work, to learn how, as I was aging, how things were shifting, how the food that I ate impacted how I was feeling. I started going to a chiropractor to address the headaches, and it was a holistic chiropractor. And so he really helped, kind of address things from, he didn't just adjust you. Like he was definitely like, okay, you're having digestive issues. Well, then that's connected to this. And so let's look into that. And so
Hmm.
really just trying to get educated on how my body works. And that was so helpful for me. I overhauled my diet. I realized that I was sensitive to soy, which I was exploring a vegetarian diet because I was like, maybe it's, maybe I need to be a vegetarian and that's why I'm crazy. And so I started exploring that, but then in turn it was making it worse because I was allergic to soy, and really just started doing a deep dive into my physical health. And I've always been an active person. I was an athlete growing up. And so the physical, as far as like the exercise aspect, has never been an issue for me. However, the mental strength that comes from doing yoga and meditation was something that I did not have. And so I got into regular yoga and meditation classes. And this was, I mean, honestly, it was a religious experience for me because I recognized just how much I was ignoring my mind and the thoughts that were in my mind, and the little amount of control that I actually had over my thoughts. And for me, whenever I think of, I'm a believer, I follow Jesus, and I always heard the passage about taking your thoughts captive. And that was kind of always equated to like lusting after someone or, you know, I don't know, gambling or killing someone. Like it was always this very grand idea of controlling your thoughts. And I realized throughout my yoga practice, at least for me, that means like my yoga sessions and my meditation sessions are me taking my thoughts captive because they ran all over me.
Wow.
And so being able to sit with them and feel them, but then also not let them dictate how I act or react or even think about myself, that was me pursuing that idea of taking my thoughts captive. And that was a huge revelation for me because that was, I think I can honestly say that was really when I saw a correlation of mental health and spiritual health, and that it really is intertwined all in the scriptures. And I think we've just gotten it wrong for a really long time. But that's a
Yeah.
whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
Go ahead.
so good, about yoga and meditation being how you take your thoughts captive. Because that does kind of flip the whole thing on its head. And it's like, no, this is a time and space that I carve out, so that I approach the day from this place, and I'm not reacting to everything that's happening around me. I'm choosing to enter into my day in this way, to take my thoughts captive. That's, you captured that beautifully. And for me, that's, if I don't start my day with some kind of workout, I just feel off balance the rest of the day. I just do. Taking your thoughts captive isn't like this thing where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't think about that. It's like, no. You choose how you react to the things that are happening around you based on this discipline, this
Yes.
discipline that you have in your life.
The self discipline aspect of that was something that I lacked just overall. And that has been, I mean, one of the first meditation sessions that I went to, the teacher was like, hey, you have to stop moving. Like, stop fidgeting, stop, you have to stop moving. Because I could not physically sit still. I couldn't, because my mind was constantly doing this. Like, I couldn't be present in the moment. And I realized how much, number one, self-discipline that takes, and how important it is to be present, because I had no idea what I was missing because I was constantly in war with my mind. So there were so many benefits to that.
Yeah, man, that's so good. You said turning point with medication. There's a stigma attached to mental health issues in general. Some of the biggest pieces of that a lot of times seem to be associated with medication. I don't know why, but you said it was a turning point for you. Can you help me understand that?
I fought going on medication for 3 years. This is why it was a 3-year journey. I experienced, it was seasons of anxiety would then trigger seasons of depression, and then the depression would trigger anxiety. And it was kind of like this never ending merry-go-round. And I ended up getting to the point where I felt so defeated, because I was like, I'm doing everything right. Like, I am doing all of the things. I've changed my diet. I'm exercising. I've hired people so that I can have a great work-life balance. I'm saying no to stuff. I was doing everything right, and I still was struggling. And from the outside, my life looked phenomenal. And it was. I mean, my business was as successful as it had ever been. I had a great marriage. I was starting to kind of, get my life back from just a friend relational standpoint. I was traveling all the time. I mean, I had Instagram worthy life happening. And I was laying in bed at a friend's house in Nashville with Brandon. And I woke up, and I was still, every day I would wake up. And the way that I describe this to him, and honestly, his journey as a partner to someone who is struggling with mental health is a whole nother story, because that, I think, was I think his story is worth telling, as far as being a partner to someone who's going through this, who has never struggled with anything like that before, and just how he had to figure out how to love me through it, but also, support himself. And just, that's a whole nother thing. But every morning at this point, I was waking up just feeling like my head was in bubble wrap. And this was definitely in a season of depression. I had crying spells. I didn't want to do anything. Nothing was bringing me joy. I was very just kind of melancholy all the time. And the brain fog was insane. My memory was shot.
Wow.
I was miserable. And I woke up that day. I haven't gotten emotional about this in a really long time. I woke up that day and I told him, I said, I understand how people choose not to live this way, because it is miserable. And I have the perfect life. Nothing is wrong. And I am just miserable. And laying there, that's when he said, will you please reconsider medication? Because this was something that he knew that I was going to try everything that I could. And I still think, I still am an advocate for addressing things holistically and not just putting a band-aid on things with medication. And so I still encourage people who are walking this road to really do their research and really try to address things from every area. But at the end of the day, he said, you are doing everything that you should be doing, and it's still not working. So why not try to add this tool to your toolbox? Because that's really how I was approaching things online, because at this point I had started sharing my story and really being transparent about everything. He said, you talk about all these tools that you use to address this. Why not try? Like, it's not working. So why not try something else? And I called my doctor that day, and I called my therapist, and I said, can you refer me to a prescribing doctor? Because something's got to give. Like, I can't continue living this way. And I ended up seeing a psychiatric RN. And because I really wanted to go to someone who would continue to ask the hard questions and weren't just writing a prescription. And so that was really important to me. And I mean, I still chat with her every couple of months. We've had to really explore my dosage. I'm on Zoloft. Thankfully for me, that has worked from the beginning. So I haven't really had to, try different medications. We've had to experiment with different dosages, but I was able to stay on that through my pregnancy. I'm still on it today. And I think at the beginning, I was really adamant about, okay, I'll go on this for 6 months. And then once things are stable, I'm going to wean myself off, and that'll be that. And just really coming to terms with, I might be on this the rest of my life, and that's okay. Because after things settled, and, the first couple of weeks are really hard because you're kind of like a zombie. But then once things level out, I was like, holy crap, is this what like everybody else feels like? Because this is really great. And it wasn't that, so many people are like, oh, I don't want it to change who I am, and I don't want to not have feelings, and which is all understandable. I had those same fears initially. I'm like, no, I'm actually feeling now. Like, I feel like experiencing life as it's supposed to be. And that, partnered with all of the other steps that I had taken, it was the perfect mix of what I needed. And so I started taking that in 2019. And it hasn't been perfect. I really struggled with some postpartum. I don't even know what you would label what I struggled with postpartum, but I still struggled after having my son. And honestly, the beginning of this year, the end of last year and the beginning of this year was really hard. And I was in a really dark space that challenged my marriage. It challenged, everything. And I think now, because I have been through this, I can recognize when I'm not in a good space, and I can recognize, okay, I don't need to be making decisions when I'm in this headspace. And so I just feel like I've been equipped to just recognize when I'm struggling, and to be okay with that, and know that I have the tools to wait it out, and that there's going to be a clearing at the end of the woods. I kind of describe it as wandering in the woods. And there was a long time that I just sat down and started playing in the dirt and didn't even care about trying to find my way out. But now I know that there's always a way out. And sometimes I have to be okay with being lost for a little while. And I think that's really important for people to remember, that mental health it doesn't have a definite beginning, and it doesn't have a definite end. For some people it does, but for others, it's an ebb and flow throughout your whole life. And I think just equipping yourself to know how to handle that ebb and flow is the best thing that you can do.
And you said something interesting before the internet did the thing. You were talking about, like, you just have to be okay with being lost for a while. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing that's so interesting for me. I would give anything, really, to go back to never having had any of these issues. But I started a journey that I think I'm just always going to be on. there's something that's helpful to tell people, like, hey, this isn't like, you don't snap your fingers, you don't take a magic pill. Like, you have crossed over into a new territory, and you're going to be on a journey for a little while. Could be the rest of your life. 20 milligrams of Prozac, is still take it today. And actually, I came off it and then had a really stressful season with a big project at work. And, mine all started with, anxiety that I didn't realize it was anxiety, and then turned into insomnia. And I went downhill so fast. It was unbelievable. And it started to happen again. I was like, well, I may just need Prozac for a really long time, and that's okay. But okay.
I knew that I was like in a spot, and I said, hey, can you up my dosage? And she's like, Amanda, you're on the highest dosage. So if this isn't working, you need to try something else. I was like, well, crap.
You're like, thanks. You could have told me that a different way. I do want to have like a little bit of fun and just ask you some quick rapid fire questions. If you don't have answers right away, that's okay. So here's number one.
Okay.
What are 3 things you have done or changed in the last year that have improved your life? It could be a habit, an action, or a belief.
I have started reading for pleasure and not for self-improvement. I have stopped running. So I recognize that I loathe running, and it makes my life worse. So I have stopped running.
Awesome.
And I have been okay with mediocre. And that's something that I have never been okay with in my life, but I have chosen to just be okay with mediocre for seasons, whether that's in my marriage, whether that's in my work, whether that's in my I'm still not there with motherhood, but I've just been okay with things not seemingly being progressing.
Yeah. Do you struggle with perfectionism? Is that like
oh my
yes. Yeah. I totally get that. JC has a similar thing. I do not, but she has issues with that. What are 3 books that have made the biggest impact on your life?
The Body Keeps Score, Woman Code, and Steal Like an Artist.
Okay, last one here, and I think this will probably help capture and sum up our time together. What are 3 pieces of wisdom that you can leave people with, or 3 lessons that people can take away?
Nothing you experience is unique, or I want to say special, but that's not what I mean. There is someone else who has experienced what you're experiencing. So you're never alone in whatever you're experiencing. Helping someone else brings purpose to your pain, whatever that is. So if you have been through something and you are like, well, I don't know why I've experienced this, there's someone that needs your story. And however you impact that person with your story is the purpose for whatever it is that you experienced. Life's not that serious. Like, just have some fun. It's not, I feel like people overthink everything. It's not, people aren't, looking at you and thinking all the things that you think they're thinking. They're not, they don't care. So it's not
they're not
that
even
serious.
Thinking about you.
No, they're thinking the same things about them that you're thinking about you that they're thinking. So it's, it's all good. It's all good.
So good. Amanda, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom, and just being willing to share your journey. So grateful. We'll catch you at some point, maybe in a later episode. Until then, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to hear about more of your story too.
Oh yeah, that'll come later dates. Man, I hope that conversation was helpful for you. I know it was for me. I'm going to remind you, I'm going to ask you this over and over and over again. Please like, share, subscribe, and rate the podcast in whatever platform you use so that the people that need to hear these conversations will. And also, ladies, find Reviv retreats. Go and do yourself a favor. Book yourself a retreat. Thank you so much again for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Chase the Peace.